Hey guys, very delicate subject obviously, and there's always some people who don't quite get the point or misunderstand what was said or just don't listen and end up going off on their own little rant. So I just want to clarify a couple of things right from the start. One is that our family is full of girls and ladies. We have girls and ladies in our family that are from 8 months old to 100 years old. So we've got a lot of ladies in our family, girls and ladies in our family who we love. So obviously if we see any stories at all of sexual assault or any sort of violence or harassment or any other sort of ill treatment of a girl or a woman, we relate that to the girls and women that we know, and we imagine how we'd feel if it happened to them. So obviously we get an emotional feeling when we hear any story of any girl or any lady anywhere being treated badly by anybody. Obviously that's a human nature thing, isn't it? So we feel some strong feelings about that. So that's the first point. The second point is, obviously, as I've actually said on previous videos on other topics, anybody who breaks the law needs to be punished to the full extent of the law. That's why we have laws, right? Otherwise it's pointless. So obviously anybody who commits any crime at all, whether that be sexual assault or rape or any sort of violence or harassment or anything at all that is against the law, obviously they should be charged and brought before a court, and if they're found guilty they should be punished to the full extent of the law. Obviously that's why we have laws and justice, criminal justice systems and so on. So that's the first 2 points. If we can keep that in mind through this whole video, that'd be fantastic. So the last year or two, or a few years, we've seen in the USA, and things that have taken place in the USA that have been reported all around the world. Recently, some similar sort of things are starting to take place in Australia and probably lots of other countries around the world as well. The one that sort of stood out at the time was Bill Cosby. One of the first ones was Bill Cosby's thing, you know, with him putting rape drugs in people's drinks and drugging them and then molesting them, you know. And again, obviously, if those charges are true, obviously a major crime, and he should be punished to the full extent of the law, obviously. And then since then, of course, we've had regular ones, and in the last 12 months it's just gone nuts. I mean, just gotta throw in one. Trump just came to mind then. Amazingly, Trump admitted, you know, they recorded Trump saying that about him molesting women and touching women up and just general predatorial behaviour. And all these other people that have been, you know, destroyed over the last year or two for similar sort of stuff, and it seems that the Trump thing's just been left for some strange reason, which is sort of makes the whole system lose a bit of credibility, really, if he's allowed to have behaved like that and there's no talk about consequences for him at all. Whereas at the same time, obviously, there's a lot of other people paying big consequences. That seems a bit odd, but anyway, that's a the Trump thing. And then we've seen a whole series of other people who've done all sorts of things. One that got me was Louis C.K. That was really disappointing because, you know, Louis sort of talked about that in his stand-up comedy about his masturbation and all the rest of it. But obviously, in real life, he was doing the same thing, and he was taking that too far as well. So obviously he's done some stuff there he shouldn't have. And so obviously there's been people that have done things that are illegal. Obviously they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. There's been other people that have done things that are inappropriate. And inappropriate, some of them are clearly inappropriate, verging on crimes, and probably inappropriate enough that they'd probably be deemed harassment, and in some countries would be crimes. So obviously that's clearly bad behaviour, and clearly there could be some sort of, or should be some sort of punishment for that. But a couple of them have been a little bit marginal, where it's sort of like this guy 20 years ago this guy propositioned this lady, and you know, she was trying to get a job and she went along with it, and then, you know, 20 years later she's complaining about it. And there's a few that was sort of like a bit, geez, I don't know, what's the story there? That's an adult woman. I keep thinking, when I hear some of these stories, I keep thinking of the women in our family in Australia. And if some guy said something that was sort of, you know, inappropriate or made them feel uncomfortable, they'd tell him to fuck off. And it wouldn't matter if it was a boss. I've got one sister who's told bosses to fuck off, and it wouldn't matter if it was someone that was in a position of power above them or not, you know. And of course, not all ladies have the sort of the strength to do that, of course. So some of them feel intimidated by different people, particularly famous people. So you can see how that could happen too. So it's sort of like, I don't know. Some of them are a little bit hard to fathom. But the one that really triggered this video was today. There's a story in the paper about, what's his name? Matt Damon. Matt Damon forced to apologise. The headlines were, Matt Damon forced to apologise for sexual harassment comments. And so, on reading the story, what he actually said was that there are varying degrees of harassment and the punishment should reflect that, right? Now, it's a sort of little bit what I was hedging to myself just there before about, you know, what is actual, you know, the degrees. But just looking at what he said, there's varying degrees of inappropriate behaviour. There's varying degrees of inappropriate behaviour, and the punishment should reflect that, right? Now, what he's saying there is a basic premise of most good systems of justice. Most justice systems, most good justice systems around the world have varying degrees when they're talking about crimes. You know, so if you're in a bar and you push someone in a bar, you give them one push, obviously you won't be punished as much as somebody who beat that person to the ground and beat them half to death, right? And we actually do have a lot of the justice systems have levels where they can call it, you know, grievous bodily harm or simple assault or whatever it happens to be, varying degrees of assault, and the punishment fits the crime. So that if it's a simple assault that there was no harm done, no damage done, but it was still a crime, the person gets a level of punishment. If they beat the person half to death and left them with permanent damage, obviously the punishment is more severe. And it's the same as with murder. Murder's the same. If you know, in a fit of rage, two guys are fighting and one of them falls down and dies, then, you know, the other person will probably be charged with manslaughter and will get some sort of punishment. But if someone takes a gun and waits outside someone's house, and when they get out of the car they shoot them dead, obviously the punishment is higher because it's premeditated and it was planned, and, you know, and so, you know, first degree murder, second degree murder, and manslaughter, and all the different levels of crime for different crimes. Different crimes have different names and different types of punishment. So what Matt Damon actually said was a basic fundamental of most justice systems, that there are varying degrees of harassment and the punishment should what do you say, take that into consideration or something. Paraphrasing, okay, you can find the quote yourself, but that's paraphrasing what he said. Basically, that the punishment should fit the crime, that there's varying degrees of inappropriate behaviour and the punishment should be appropriate for that, which is a basic premise. And when he said it, all these people went, "Oh, you're defending sexual violence and you're defending you're doing this," and they straight away put him in the Bill Cosby group, right, which could destroy his career. So he went, "Oh, no, I'm terribly sorry. I've learnt a lesson from this, and I've learnt something." What he's probably learnt is that the freedom of speech isn't as free as he thought it was. That's probably what he's learnt, and he's probably learnt to shut his mouth, as have most people. You know, obviously making this video is going to be a big problem too, because there's some people that just cannot have an open mind about things. What I'm hoping for with this video is just to appeal to some people to think about the fact that we need to, as civilized societies, we need to maintain some sense of reasonableness and fairness and justice. You know, that if people have done the wrong thing, then let's punish them. Let's punish them, whatever they've done. Let's find a punishment that fits, and let's punish them for whatever they've done wrong. You know, make them pay some sort of price for it. But let's stay reasonable and calm. And I just keep thinking of the people with the torches, you know, with the flaming torches, the mobs going around grabbing people and killing them because they were called a witch, it's a witch hunt, right? It's out of control. When a person can't... That comment he made, I mean, there's been a whole heap of stuff the last year or two that I've heard of. I don't know about that one. But I've left it alone because, I don't know, I wasn't there and I don't know the reality, I don't know the truth of it, so I'll stay out of it. But his comment was basically just calling for a sense of reasonableness and justice. That's all he was doing. And everyone lost their... Not everyone, but a whole bunch of people lost their minds, and then they pressured him into apologising for it and backing down. Which is a real shame. That's a real loss for reasonableness and justice and fairness, and you know, and anybody else who'd been thinking of saying something similar obviously would have pulled their heads in, because you know, the people are losing careers over comments at the moment because of all this stuff. So yeah, that's it. That was basically it. That's the bit that I just couldn't believe. I just couldn't believe that he was getting fried for calling for fair punishment for whatever, because you know, obviously there's a big difference. You know, the people that have obviously committed crimes and obviously, you know, done some really bad stuff, then obviously, you know, they need to be punished accordingly. But some of this stuff where someone 20 years ago said something to somebody, well, okay, if it was inappropriate, then maybe there's some sort of punishment that's appropriate for that. All this talk of what's inappropriate, how about making the punishments appropriate? Because at the moment, it just seems like they're just destroying people. They're absolutely destroying people. And of course, nobody's waiting for it to actually go to court. You know, if there's more than one person, even if there's only one person accusing anybody of anything at the moment, straight away, that's the end of them, isn't it? You know, their managers leave them, their companies, their management companies leave them, and their tours get cancelled, and television shows get cancelled, and they're finished. They're finished. Which, if they are guilty of some sort of offence against another person, then maybe that's fair enough. But quite often, what we're seeing is there's no proof yet. You know, nobody's proved anything yet. You know, one person might have said one thing that this person had done 20 years ago, and that's all we've got. So it really seems crazy. It really seems like it's getting overly emotional. That's why I started off by saying that I understand the emotion. You know, if somebody touched, you know, one of the girls in our family inappropriately, or did something to one of the girls in our family, of course, you know, could quite easily understand the desire to kill them, you know. But as civilized, intelligent human beings, we have to get past that, and we have to be reasonable and calm and appropriate. All this talk of being inappropriate, all these things that are inappropriate, well, the responses quite often seem to be very inappropriate. You know, let's have an appropriate response. If we're all obsessed with being appropriate, let's have appropriate responses to these situations, you know, and appropriate punishments for these people. And, you know, one of the things that would be appropriate is to wait until the facts are all known before we fry these people, because it's just, people are just having their lives destroyed at the moment, you know, and maybe most of the time it's justified, maybe it is, but let's wait until we know, you know, let's wait until we know, because at the moment they're just getting fried. You know, someone mentions their name and says they did something, and poof, you know, it's up in the media, and that's the end of them. They're finished. It's unbelievable. So again, just clarifying, anybody who's done anything wrong needs to be punished, but let's find out what they did. Let's find out what they did. And look, I'm all for listening to witnesses or victims. You know, let's listen to what they've got to say, and let's make a reasonable and fair decision on what's happened, and let's give them some punishment, and let's let the justice system do it. I don't want the media doing it. You know what those guys are like with facts. They're terrible with facts, most of them. You know, they get stuff second-hand and third-hand and repeat stuff, and let's not have them running our justice system. Let's have the justice system running the justice system, and let's you know, be fair and reasonable and appropriate, and civilized societies, you know. And I mean, this isn't just the US, this is starting to spill over into Australia now too, and then there's probably other countries as well where this stuff's starting to happen. Probably need more of it in Japan, you know, but let's try and keep it reasonable and fair and appropriate. That's the word. That's the word to use. When we're talking about inappropriate behaviour, let's have some appropriate response to it, you know? Anyway, hopefully someone got that. I had to do this one. You know, all the other ones I sort of just let it go. But the Matt Damon one, you know, he hadn't done anything wrong. All he was doing was calling for a sense of fairness and justice. That's all he was doing. And he got fried, and then he backed down. That was the saddest thing about that. You know, this behaviour, this mob mentality behaviour, where everybody gets so emotional that, I mean, that's all so unreasonable. You know, that's all so unreasonable that here's a person who hasn't done anything wrong, calling for people to be fair and reasonable and just, and he got beaten down to the point where he apologised and backed off. That's terrible. That's not good for our societies. That's the mob behaviour again. Let's go hang this bastard. Let's go hang this bastard. Yeah. And no one's game to say, wait a minute, do we know what he did? Nobody's game to say it because they're worried they're going to get fried. I knew when I thought about making this video that, oh no, there'll be some bloody crazy person who goes on about you're defending people as sexually assault other people, or some, you know, there's always one person who doesn't get it. They don't listen. Someone whose keenness to comment is stronger than their ability to listen. Always have that. So, you know, no doubt there'll be some of that, you know, but we shouldn't let it stop us talking. You know, we've seen this before with other topics. You know, people get intimidated. People get intimidated to not say what they really think because they're scared of the mob. We shouldn't be scared of the mob. You know, really, Jesus, it's 2017. We should have evolved past the stage of you know, lynching people, which is what's going on at the moment. It's just insane. I think witch hunt keeps coming to mind with this stuff because that's what it's like. It's mobs of people kicking indoors and grabbing people and throwing them in rivers and drowning them just because, you know, because they think they might have done something. You know, we need to be a little bit more civilized than that and have some fair and reasonable processes going on. And then by all means, look, if we find some dude has treated some lady or some girl badly, let's punish the hell out of them, I reckon, to the full extent of the law or to the full extent of whatever's appropriate for their misdeed or their crime or whatever bad thing that they've done. Let's punish them to the full extent that we can, I reckon. But let's make sure it's appropriate and make sure it's correct first, shall we? You know, let's try and be fair and reasonable. Anyway, there it was. More videos coming soon.